Welcome to Tales by Felix, where every story unlocks a new world. Remember to subscribe, like and share. Let's begin. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee usually wrapped Sarah Adebayo's mornings in a comforting embrace, a ritual that anchored her before the chaos of her day as a sought-after architect. Her Legos home, a sleek masterpiece of glass and steel she designed herself, hummed with the quiet elegance of a life meticulously crafted. At 35, Sarah had built a decade of dreams with her husband, Mark, a charismatic financial consultant whose charm could light up a room. Their marriage was the envy of their social circle, a power couple, perfectly balanced, with a love that seemed unshakable. But on this particular morning, as the sun spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows, an icy dread seeped into Sarah's bones, chilling her despite the warm mug in her hands. Mark sat across from her at the kitchen island, his phone buzzing incessantly as it always did. He was dressed in his usual crisp suit, his dark eyes scanning the screen with a faint smile. Sarah watched him, her architect's eye catching the subtle shift in his demeanor, a brightness that felt out of place. "Darling," he said, looking up, his voice smooth as honey, "we need a new maid. Just for a few weeks. Mrs. Ade is taking leave, and the house is getting a bit much." His smile was disarming, but there was something in his eyes, a flicker of excitement that didn't quite match the mundane request. Sarah raised an eyebrow, her mind already racing through blueprints and client meetings. "A maid? I didn't realize the house was that bad." She glanced around, noting the pristine surfaces. Mrs. Ade, their longtime housekeeper, kept the place immaculate. Still, Sarah trusted Mark's judgment. He was practical, always thinking 2 steps ahead. "Fine," she said, sipping her coffee, though a flicker of unease danced at the edge of her thoughts. "Just handle it. I've got the Adeniji project deadline looming." Mark nodded, his smile widening. "Don't worry, I've got it covered." He stood, kissed her forehead, a touch that felt perfunctory, and headed out, leaving Sarah alone with her unease. It was a small thing, this request, but it lingered like a smudge on a perfectly polished window. She shook it off, chalking it up to stress. Little did she know, this seemingly innocent decision would unravel the meticulously crafted tapestry of her life. A week later, the doorbell chimed, slicing through the quiet hum of Sarah's Saturday morning. She was in her home office, sketching designs for a new eco-friendly complex, when Mark called out, "Sarah, she's here." His voice carried an unusual lilt, almost eager. Sarah frowned, setting down her pencil. She'd expected Mrs. Ade's temporary replacement to be someone like her, older, matronly, unobtrusive. Instead, when she reached the foyer, she froze. Standing on the doorstep was a vision in a simple floral dress, her figure accentuated by the soft fabric. Lara was young, mid-20s, Sarah guessed, with flawless ebony skin and eyes that held an unnerving allure, like pools of dark honey catching the light. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun, but a single curl escaped, framing her face with effortless grace. Sarah's stomach twisted, an instinctive reaction she couldn't quite place. "Sarah, this is Lara," Mark said, his voice a shade too warm. He stood closer to Lara than necessary, his hand gesturing toward her with a flourish. "She comes highly recommended." Lara's lips curved into a polite smile, but her gaze lingered on Sarah, assessing. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Adebayo," she said, her voice soft but clear, with a hint of something, confidence? Defiance? Sarah couldn't tell. "Welcome, Lara," Sarah replied, forcing a smile. "I trust you'll keep things running smoothly while Mrs. Ade is away." Her words were polite, but her eyes flicked to Mark, who was already explaining the layout of the house to Lara with an enthusiasm Sarah hadn't seen in months. The cold knot in her stomach tightened. As Lara stepped inside, her heels clicking softly on the marble floor, Sarah caught a whiff of her perfume, something floral and exotic, nothing like the practical scents Mrs. Ade favored. Mark led Lara toward the kitchen, his hand brushing her arm as he pointed out the pantry. Sarah's jaw clenched. This wasn't just a maid. This was a disruption, a crack in the foundation of her perfect life. That evening, as Sarah and Mark sat down to dinner, the air felt charged. Mark was unusually talkative, recounting a client meeting with animated gestures. "Lara's going to be a godsend," he said, cutting into his steak. "She's got experience in high-end households. You won't have to lift a finger." Sarah poked at her salad, her appetite waning. She seems young, she said carefully, watching his reaction. Mark shrugged, his eyes not quite meeting hers. Young, but capable. You'll see. He changed the subject, launching into a story about a new investment deal. Sarah nodded along, but her mind was elsewhere, replaying the image of Mark's hand on Lara's arm, the way Lara's eyes had lingered on him. She told herself she was being paranoid. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and it was already taking root. Days bled into a week, and Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Lara was too efficient, gliding through the house like a ghost, her movements precise and silent. She dusted shelves that were already spotless, arranged flowers with an artist's touch, and prepared meals that rivaled a chef's. It should have been a relief, but instead, it grated on Sarah's nerves. Lara was too present, her beauty a constant, unspoken challenge in Sarah's own home. Mark, meanwhile, was changing. He'd always been a workaholic, often staying late at his firm, but now he was home more often, citing flexible hours. Sarah noticed him lingering in the kitchen when Lara was there, offering to help with tasks he'd never bothered with before. One afternoon, she walked in to find them laughing over something, a private joke, from the way they fell silent when she entered. Mark's hand rested briefly on Lara's shoulder, a touch that lasted a heartbeat too long. "Everything okay?" Sarah asked, her voice sharper than intended. Mark grinned, unfazed. "Just telling Lara about that time we got lost in Abuja. She's got a great sense of humor." Lara smiled demurely, her eyes flicking to Sarah. "Mr. Adebayo's stories are quite entertaining," she said, her tone neutral but her gaze bold. Sarah forced a smile, her architect's eye catching every detail, the way Mark's posture relaxed around Lara, the way Lara's lips curved just so. The once vibrant laughter in their home was gone, replaced by a suffocating tension, a silent battle playing out under her nose. That night, as she lay beside Mark, his breathing steady in sleep, Sarah stared at the ceiling, her mind racing. Was she imagining things? Or was the life she'd built starting to fracture? The unease grew, fed by small, insidious moments. A misplaced scarf in the living room, one Sarah hadn't worn in weeks. A strange scent, floral, like Lara's perfume, lingering in the hallway. A hushed phone call Mark ended abruptly when Sarah entered the room, his smile too quick, too forced. "Just a client," he'd said, but his eyes darted away. Sarah's best friend, Amara, noticed it too. They met for tea at a trendy Ikoyi cafe, the kind of place where Lagos elites swapped gossip over overpriced lattes. Amara, a sharp-witted lawyer with a knack for reading people, leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "That new maid of yours," she said, stirring her tea. "She gives me a strange vibe." Sarah frowned, swirling her spoon in her cup. "Lara? She's efficient. Maybe too efficient." Amara raised an eyebrow. "It's not her efficiency I'm worried about. It's the way she looks at Mark. And the way he looks at her." She paused, her voice softening. "Sarah, you've noticed it too, haven't you?" Sarah's grip tightened on her cup. She wanted to dismiss it, to cling to the trust she'd always had in Mark. "He's just being friendly," she said, but the words felt hollow. "He's always been charming." Amara leaned back, her expression skeptical. "Friendly doesn't linger like that. Be careful, Sarah. Something's not right." The conversation haunted Sarah as she drove home. She replayed every moment, the glances, the touches, the silences. When she walked into the house, she found Mark and Lara in the living room, Lara dusting a shelf while Mark sat on the couch, his laptop open but his eyes on her. "Sarah," he said, startled as if caught. "Didn't hear you come in." Lara turned, her smile serene. "Good evening, Mrs. Adebayo. I was just finishing up." Sarah nodded, her throat tight. "Thank you, Lara. That'll be all for today." As Lara left the room, Sarah met Mark's gaze, searching for the man she'd married. But all she saw was a stranger, and the seeds of doubt Amara had planted began to sprout. One evening, as Sarah prepared for bed, she caught it, a delicate, unfamiliar perfume lingering in their bedroom. It was floral, exotic, unmistakably Lara's. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a primal instinct screaming what her mind refused to accept. She stood frozen, inhaling the scent, each breath a confirmation of her worst fears. This was no air freshener, No innocent mistake. This was an invasion. She found Mark in the study, his phone in hand, a faint smile playing on his lips as he typed. "Mark," she said, her voice trembling despite her effort to stay calm. "What is that smell in our bedroom?" His smile faltered, his eyes flicking up. "What? Oh, probably a new air freshener Lara's using. She's been trying different ones." Sarah's hands clenched into fists. "That's not an air freshener. It's perfume. Her perfume." Mark's face tightened, but he recovered quickly, laughing lightly. "Sarah, come on. You're overthinking this. It's just a scent." "Don't lie to me," she snapped, her voice low but sharp. "I know what I smelled." He stood, crossing the room to her, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Darling, you're stressed. The Adeniji project's got you wound up. Let's not make this a thing." But it was a thing. The lie was as clear as the scent itself, hanging in the air between them. Sarah turned and walked out, her mind a storm of rage and hurt. The puzzle pieces were connecting, forming a picture she desperately didn't want to see. That night, she lay awake, the scent of betrayal clinging to her, a silent vow forming in her heart. She would uncover the truth, no matter the cost. Sleepless nights had become Sarah Adebayo's new reality. The once inviting darkness of her Lagos bedroom now felt like a cage, each creak of the house amplifying the storm in her mind. The scent of Lara's perfume in her bedroom had been the final straw, a taunt that refused to fade. Mark's dismissive explanation, air freshener he'd said, rang hollow, a lie so flimsy it insulted her intelligence. By 4 a.m., with Mark snoring softly beside her, Sarah could no longer ignore the gnawing suspicion that clawed at her heart. She slipped out of bed, her bare feet silent on the cool marble floor, and crept to the living room. Mark's phone sat on the coffee table, its screen dark but beckoning. Sarah hesitated, her breath shallow. She'd never been the type to snoop, trust had been the bedrock of their marriage, but trust was crumbling, and she needed answers. Her fingers trembled as she picked up the phone, the passcode, their anniversary, 0512, unlocking it with a soft click. The screen glowed, revealing a string of notifications. Her heart pounded as she opened his messages, scrolling past work chats and group threads. Then she saw it, a contact labeled L. No name, just an initial. Her throat tightened as she tapped it, revealing a thread that stretched back weeks. The words hit her like bullets. "Missed you today," Lara had written, followed by a winking emoji. Mark's reply, "You're making it hard to focus. Tomorrow." The messages grew more intimate, more explicit, each one a dagger to Sarah's heart. Photos, Lara in a low-cut top, Mark's hand on her waist in a selfie taken in their kitchen. Sarah's vision blurred, tears mixing with rage. The world spun, her perfect life fracturing into a million jagged pieces. She sank onto the couch, clutching the phone, the evidence burning into her memory. This wasn't a suspicion anymore. This was betrayal, raw and undeniable, unfolding in her own home. The man she'd loved for a decade, the man she'd built a life with, was a stranger. She didn't sleep that night, her mind racing with questions, plans, and a cold, growing resolve. Morning broke with a cruel brightness, the sun streaming through the glass walls of their home as if mocking Sarah's turmoil. She sat at the kitchen island, her coffee untouched, the phone hidden in her pocket like a grenade. Mark shuffled in, humming a tune, his usual morning routine infuriatingly normal. He poured himself a coffee, oblivious to the storm brewing across from him. "Morning, darling," he said, flashing his charming smile. "Big day today." Sarah's fingers tightened around her mug, her voice a low, dangerous whisper. "Mark." She slid the phone across the island, the screen still open to the damning messages. "Who is Lara to you?" His face drained of color, the mug frozen halfway to his lips. For a moment, he was silent, his eyes darting to the phone, then back to her. "Sarah, where did you get that?" "Don't," she snapped, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. "Don't lie to me again. I saw everything. The messages. The photos. Everything." Mark set the mug down, his hands shaking slightly. "It's not what you think," he started, but his voice faltered under her gaze. It's just a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" Sarah's laugh was bitter, sharp. You're texting her about missing her, about meeting up, and that's a misunderstanding? You're sneaking around in our home, Mark. Our home. He ran a hand through his hair, desperation creeping into his voice. Sarah, please. Let's talk about this calmly. It was a mistake, okay? A stupid mistake. Her eyes burned with tears she refused to let fall. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. This is betrayal. She stood, her chair scraping against the floor. How long, Mark? How long have you been lying to me? His silence was answer enough. The room felt smaller, the air thicker, as Sarah waited for a response that never came. His carefully constructed facade was crumbling, and she saw him for what he was, not the man she loved, but a coward caught in his own web. Mark's resolve broke under the weight of Sarah's stare. He slumped into a chair, his head in his hands, and the truth spilled out like poison. It started a few months ago, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Before Lara even came here. I met her at a client's event. She was different. Things just happened. Sarah's chest tightened, each word a fresh wound. Things just happened, she echoed, her voice trembling with rage. You brought her into our home, Mark. You hired her as our maid. You let her sleep under our roof while you carried on with her. It wasn't planned, he pleaded, his eyes wide with panic. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I was going to end it, I swear. I love you, Sarah. You're my wife. Love. She spat the word, her voice rising. You don't love someone and do this, Mark. You don't destroy them like this. Tears streamed down her face now, hot and unstoppable, but beneath them, a cold, hard resolve was forming. She wasn't just hurt, she was done. Mark reached for her hand, but she yanked it away. Don't touch me, she said, her voice shaking but firm. You've made your choice. And now you'll live with it. She turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving him alone with his excuses. The world she'd known, the life she'd built with Mark, was shattered, its pieces scattered like glass. But in the wreckage, Sarah felt something new, a spark of strength, a determination to reclaim her life, no matter what it took. The tears stopped by midday. Sarah stood in her home office, staring at the blueprints pinned to the wall, her mind a battlefield of pain and clarity. The hurt was immense, a raw ache that threatened to swallow her, but it was solidifying into something else, a fierce, cold anger. She didn't scream, didn't throw things. Instead, a chilling calm descended, wrapping her in an armor of resolve. She returned to the kitchen, where Mark sat, still hunched over, his face a mask of guilt. He looked up, hopeful, as if expecting her to soften. But Sarah's gaze was ice, her voice steady and devoid of emotion. Get out, Mark. Get out of my house. His eyes widened. Sarah, please. We can work through this. Counseling, anything you want. No, the word was final, a door slamming shut. You don't get to decide what happens next. You lost that right. Pack your things and leave. Now. Mark stared at her, stunned by the transformation. The warm, trusting Sarah he'd known was gone, replaced by someone unyielding, unbreakable. He opened his mouth to argue, but the look in her eyes silenced him. He nodded slowly, defeated, and stood to gather his things. As he packed, Sarah watched, her heart a mix of grief and liberation. This wasn't the end of her story, it was the beginning of a new one. She was no longer the betrayed wife, she was the architect of her own justice. With Mark gone, the house felt eerily quiet, the absence of his presence both a relief and a void. Sarah's attention turned to Lara, who had been conspicuously absent during the confrontation. She found her in the guest room, folding linens with a practiced calm, her face a mask of polite detachment. Lara, Sarah said, her voice like ice, each syllable deliberate. I know everything. Lara froze, her hands pausing mid-fold. The fake politeness slipped, replaced by a flicker of fear in her dark eyes. Mrs. Adebayo, Don't, Sarah cut her off, stepping closer. Don't lie to me. I've seen the messages, the photos. I know what you've been doing with my husband. Lara's composure cracked, her shoulders slumping. I didn't mean for it to happen, she said, her voice small. He told me. He said you two were done, That you didn't love him anymore." Sarah's laugh was sharp, devoid of humor. "And you believed him? Or did you just not care?" She studied Lara, seeing not just the seductress, but a young woman caught in a web of manipulation. "You're not the first person he's lied to, Lara. But you're going to help me make sure he pays for it." Lara's eyes widened, confusion replacing fear. "What do you mean?" Sarah's gaze was unrelenting. "Tell me everything, every detail, every promise he made you. And I promise you, Mark will face the consequences. Not just for me, but for you too." Lara hesitated, her fingers twisting the edge of a sheet. Then, slowly, she nodded, a spark of something, relief perhaps, flickering in her eyes. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll tell you everything." In that moment, an unlikely alliance was born, forged in the ashes of betrayal. Sarah didn't trust Lara, not fully, but she saw an opportunity, a chance to turn the tables on the man who'd shattered her world. The architect in her was already drafting a plan, one that would ensure Mark's downfall was as precise and devastating as her designs. The air in the guest room was thick with tension, the neatly folded linens on the bed a stark contrast to the chaos unfolding between Sarah Adebayo and Lara. Sarah stood, arms crossed, her gaze piercing through Lara's faltering composure. The young woman's eyes darted nervously, but there was a flicker of something else, relief, perhaps, or a desperate need to unburden herself. Sarah's proposition hung between them, an alliance, not out of trust, but necessity. Mark had betrayed them both, and Sarah, the architect, saw in Lara not just a rival, but a key to dismantling his carefully constructed lies. "Start talking," Sarah said, her voice low and unyielding. "Every detail, Lara. Don't leave anything out." Lara swallowed, her fingers twisting the edge of a sheet. "It started at a party," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "3 months ago. I was working as a server for one of Mr. Adebayo's clients. He noticed me. Said I had a spark. He was charming, said all the right things. I thought," she hesitated, her eyes dropping to the floor. "I thought he was different." Sarah's jaw tightened, but she stayed silent, letting Lara continue. "He told me you two were separated, that you were only together for appearances. He promised me a future, a life together." Lara's voice cracked, a mix of shame and anger. "I believed him. I was stupid." Sarah's heart twisted, not with sympathy, but with a cold recognition. Mark's charm was a weapon, one he'd wielded on her for years. "And when he hired you as our maid," she pressed. "What was that? A game?" Lara shook her head, tears welling. "He said it was a way to be close to me without raising suspicion. I didn't know. I didn't know it would hurt you like this. I'm sorry, Mrs. Adebayo." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "Sorry doesn't fix this. But you can help me make it right. Tell me everything, every conversation." Lara nodded, wiping her eyes. "There's more. He's been hiding money, moving it to accounts you don't know about. He bragged about it, said he was securing his future. I have texts, recordings. I kept them because I started to suspect he was lying to me too." Sarah's breath caught. Financial deception? This was bigger than an affair. Mark wasn't just a cheater. He was a con artist, playing a long game. "Show me," she said, her voice steady despite the rage simmering beneath. Lara pulled out her phone, scrolling through messages and audio files. Sarah listened to one recording, Mark's voice smooth and smug. "Sarah doesn't suspect a thing. Once the deal's done, we'll be set, baby." The words were a punch, but they fueled Sarah's resolve. She and Lara, bound by betrayal, were now partners in a mission to expose Mark's true face. Over the next few days, Sarah and Lara worked in secret, their alliance a fragile bridge built on mutual anger. Lara revealed more than Sarah could have imagined. Mark had been siphoning money from their joint accounts, funneling it into offshore accounts under fake names. He'd promised Lara a cut, painting a fantasy of a life abroad, far from Lagos prying eyes. But the recording showed his true intent. He was using Lara, stringing her along with lies while planning to disappear once his scheme was complete. Sarah sat at her desk, surrounded by bank statements Lara had helped her access, her architect's precision applied to a new kind of blueprint, one for Mark's downfall. "He thought he could play us both," she said, her voice cold as she reviewed a transaction log. He underestimated us. Lara, sitting across from her, nodded. He's manipulative, but he's sloppy. He didn't think I'd keep evidence. Or that you'd find out. Sarah looked at her, seeing not just the woman who'd slept with her husband, but a pawn in Mark's game, now ready to fight back. You're not just doing this for me, Sarah said. You're doing it for yourself too. He used you, Lara. Don't forget that. Lara's jaw tightened. I won't. I want him to pay as much as you do. Their conversation was interrupted by a text from Amara, Sarah's best friend. Checked on those accounts you mentioned. You were right. Shady transfers. Call me. Sarah's heart raced. Amara, a lawyer with a knack for digging up dirt, had confirmed Mark's financial deceit. The net was tightening. Sarah turned to Lara. We're not just going after his heart. We're going after his pride, his reputation, everything he values. Are you in? Lara met her gaze, a spark of determination in her eyes. All the way. Sarah's mind worked like a blueprint unfolding, each line deliberate, each angle calculated. She wasn't after a messy divorce or a private settlement. She wanted justice, public, undeniable, and devastating. Mark thrived on his image as a successful, charming consultant, the golden boy of Lagos elite. That image would be his undoing. She met with Amara at a quiet cafe in Victoria Island, the hum of conversation masking their discussion. He's been moving money for months, Amara said, sliding a folder across the table. Offshore accounts, shell companies. It's enough to bury him legally, but you want more than that, don't you? Sarah nodded, her eyes scanning the documents. I want him exposed. Not just to me, but to everyone. His clients, his friends, his family. I want the world to see who he really is. Amara leaned back, a sly smile forming. You're playing chess, not checkers. I like it. But how do you make it stick? Lara, Sarah said simply. She's got recordings, texts, proof of his lies. And I'm going to use it to tell a story, one that'll spread faster than a Lagos wildfire. Amara raised an eyebrow. You're trusting her? After everything? I'm not trusting her, Sarah corrected. I'm using her. She's got as much to lose as I do if Mark walks away from this unscathed. Sarah spent nights compiling evidence, bank records, screenshots of texts, audio files of Mark's smug promises. She consulted a lawyer, not for divorce proceedings, but to ensure her plan was airtight. Every move was calculated, every piece of evidence a brick in the wall she was building around Mark. Sarah knew Mark's greatest weakness was his ego. He basked in the admiration of his peers, his clients, the Lagos elite who saw him as a pillar of success. To destroy him, she'd hit where it hurt most, his reputation. A courtroom battle would be too slow, too private. She needed something immediate, something that would ripple through his world like a shockwave. She chose a platform with maximum impact, a video, raw and personal, to be released on a popular Nigerian news site known for its viral reach. She drafted her narrative, not as a scorned wife, but as a woman reclaiming her power. She wove in the evidence, screenshots, audio clips, bank statements, each piece a nail in Mark's coffin. Lara agreed to appear in the video, her own story a powerful counterpoint to Sarah's, exposing Mark's manipulation from both sides. This is going to destroy him, Lara said, her voice trembling as they reviewed the script in Sarah's office. Are you sure about this? Sarah's eyes were steel. He destroyed us first. This is just consequences. They recorded late at night, the house silent except for their voices. Sarah spoke with a calm that belied her pain, her words measured but searing. My husband, Mark Adebayo, presented himself as a man of integrity, she began, looking directly into the camera. But behind closed doors, he was a liar, a cheat, and a thief. She presented the evidence, her voice unwavering, while Lara added her own account, her vulnerability a stark contrast to Sarah's resolve. When they finished, Sarah felt a weight lift, replaced by a fierce anticipation. This is it, she told Lara. No going back. Lara nodded, her face pale but determined. Let's do it. Sarah chose her moment carefully. The video was uploaded to the news site at midnight, timed for maximum impact as Lagos woke to its morning routines. She didn't sleep, her eyes glued to her laptop as the views ticked upward. By dawn, the video was trending, shared across social media platforms, X posts amplifying its reach with hashtags like Mark Adebayo exposed and Justice for Sarah. She watched the comments pour in, a mix of shock, anger, and support. "This man is a disgrace," one user wrote. "Sarah, you're a queen for this," another said. Lara's testimony struck a chord, her story resonating with women who'd been manipulated by men like Mark. The internet was merciless, memes and threads dissecting Mark's deceit, his polished image crumbling in real time. Sarah's phone buzzed with calls from friends, colleagues, even clients. Amara texted, "You did it. The whole city's talking." Sarah allowed herself a small smile, but the victory was bittersweet. Her marriage was gone, her trust shattered, but she'd taken back her narrative. The world would know Mark for what he was, and she would rebuild from the ashes. As the video spread, Sarah stood on her balcony, the Lego skyline glittering before her. The pain was still there, a scar she'd carry forever, but it was tempered by a new strength. She wasn't just surviving, she was rewriting her story, and the world was watching. The video detonated across Lagos' digital landscape like a bomb, its shockwaves rippling far beyond the city's glittering skyline. By 6 a.m., Sarah Adebayo's raw, unflinching exposé of her husband Mark's betrayal had gone viral, racking up millions of views on the news site and spreading like wildfire across X, WhatsApp, and every corner of Nigeria's online ecosystem. Hashtags, Mark Adebayo exposed, Sarah's truth, Lara speaks, trended relentlessly, each post amplifying the story of a man unmasked as a liar, cheat, and thief. Sarah sat in her home office, the glow of her laptop illuminating her face as she watched the numbers climb, her heart a battlefield of vindication and lingering pain. The video itself was a masterstroke of precision and emotion, a testament to Sarah's architectural instinct for structure and impact. She spoke directly to the camera, her voice steady but laced with quiet fury, laying bare Mark's affair with Lara, their temporary maid, and his secret financial schemes. Screenshots of incriminating texts flashed on screen, alongside audio clips of Mark's smug promises to Lara, Sarah's clueless. "We'll be set soon." Lara's segment was raw, her voice trembling as she admitted her role, her shame palpable as she described Mark's manipulation. "He promised me a future," she said, tears glistening, "but he was using me, just like he used her." The combination of Sarah's cold resolve and Lara's vulnerability was electric, resonating with viewers who saw their own stories of betrayal reflected in the narrative. Sarah's phone buzzed incessantly, texts from Amara, her lawyer friend, cheering her on, "You've got the whole country talking. This is legendary." Calls from colleagues and clients poured in, some offering support, others stunned by the revelations. On X, users dissected every detail, from Mark's smug demeanor in the leaked photos to the bank statements exposing his offshore accounts. "This man thought he could play two women and walk away clean," one post read, garnering thousands of likes. Another declared, "Sarah Adebayo is a queen. Mark's done." Memes proliferated, Mark's face photoshopped onto a snake, a con artist's mugshot, a fallen king. The internet was merciless, and Sarah felt a flicker of satisfaction, though it was tempered by the ache of her shattered marriage. She glanced at Lara, who sat across from her, scrolling through her own phone with wide eyes. "They're calling me brave," Lara said, her voice soft with disbelief. "I thought they'd hate me." Sarah's expression softened, just slightly. "They see the truth. You were a victim too." It wasn't forgiveness, Sarah wasn't there yet, but it was acknowledgement. Their alliance, born of necessity, had shifted something in both of them. They weren't friends, but they were no longer enemies. As the day wore on, the video's reach expanded globally, picked up by international blogs and news outlets covering the Lagos scandal shaking Nigeria's elite. Sarah stood on her balcony, the city sprawling before her, and felt the weight of her actions. She'd torn down Mark's facade, but the cost was her own vulnerability, laid bare for the world to see. Yet in that exposure, she found strength, a new chapter beginning, not with tears, but with power. Mark Adebayo's world collapsed in real time, each notification a hammer blow to his carefully curated life. Holed up in a hotel room in Ikoyi, he watched the video on his laptop, his face ashen as Sarah's voice filled the room, calm and cutting, exposing his every lie. Lara's testimony followed, her words a betrayal he hadn't anticipated, and the evidence, texts, recordings, bank statements, was irrefutable. His phone rang incessantly, Furious clients canceling deals, colleagues distancing themselves, his mother's tearful voice demanding, "Mark, how could you?" He didn't answer, couldn't. The man who'd thrived on charm and control was now a pariah, his reputation in tatters. He tried to call Sarah, his fingers fumbling as he typed out desperate texts. "Please, let's talk. I can explain." No response. He tried Lara, only to find her number blocked. Panic set in, his breath ragged as he scrolled through X, where his name was a punchline, his face a meme. Mark Adebayo thought he was slick. Now he's unemployed and unhoused, one post jeered. His biggest client, a real estate mogul, emailed to terminate their contract, citing irreparable damage to trust. His firm followed suit, suspending him pending an investigation into his financial dealings. By noon, Mark was pacing the hotel room, sweat beading on his forehead. He dialed his lawyer, stammering, "Can we sue? Defamation, something." The lawyer's response was curt, "You've got no case. The evidence is airtight, and public opinion's against you. Lay low." But there was no laying low. Reporters camped outside the hotel, their cameras flashing as he peeked through the curtains. He was trapped, his world shrinking to the four walls of a room he could barely afford now that his accounts were under scrutiny. In a moment of desperation, he recorded a video of his own, an apology, or so he intended. "I made mistakes," he said, his voice shaking, his usual charisma replaced by a hollow desperation. "I'm human. I'm sorry." He posted it, hoping to salvage something, but the internet tore it apart. Crocodile tears. One comment read, "Save it, Mark. You're done." The video only fueled the fire, his attempt at redemption seen as a pathetic grasp at relevance. Mark collapsed onto the bed, staring at the ceiling. The man who'd once commanded boardrooms and hearts was nothing now, a cautionary tale unfolding in real time. And Sarah, the woman he'd underestimated, had orchestrated it all. Weeks passed, and the dust began to settle, though the reverberations of the video lingered. Sarah's life was forever changed, but in the aftermath, she found a profound sense of liberation. The pain of Mark's betrayal remained, a scar she'd carry always, but it no longer defined her. She'd reclaimed her narrative, her dignity, and the response from the public was overwhelming. Women reached out, sharing their own stories of betrayal and resilience, calling her an inspiration. Her architectural firm flourished, clients drawn not just to her designs but to her integrity, her strength in the face of personal devastation. One morning, Amara visited, bringing coffee and a grin. "You're a legend, Sarah," she said, settling into a chair in Sarah's office. "The Adeniji project just got approved, and 3 new clients called this week. You're unstoppable." Sarah smiled, a real smile, the first in months. "It doesn't feel like that. Not yet. But I'm getting there." Amara leaned forward, her eyes warm. "You did more than expose Mark. You showed people what it looks like to stand up. That's power." Sarah nodded, her gaze drifting to a new blueprint on her desk, a community center designed to empower women, a project born from her own journey. "I want to keep building," she said. "Not just buildings, but lives. Starting with my own." She threw herself into her work, her designs bolder, more innovative, as if her pain had unlocked a new level of creativity. Social invitations poured in, but she chose her company carefully, surrounding herself with those who valued her for her strength, not her scandal. The house, once a battleground, became a sanctuary again, filled with new furniture, new memories, and the absence of Mark's shadow. Lara, too, found a path forward, though her journey was quieter, more introspective. Freed from Mark's manipulation, she sought therapy, confronting the insecurities that had made her vulnerable to his lies. The public's response to her role in the video surprised her. Many saw her not as a villain, but as a young woman deceived, brave enough to speak out. She leaned into that, using her story to rebuild her self-worth. With Sarah's encouragement, Lara enrolled in a business course, her sights set on independence. 6 months later, she opened a small catering company, her culinary skills, honed in Sarah's kitchen, now her ticket to a new life. She named it Redemption Bites, a nod to her journey. At the launch, Sarah attended, their eyes meeting in a moment of quiet understanding. "You did good," Sarah said, her voice soft but sincere. "Thank you," Lara replied, her smile tentative, "for giving me a chance to make this right." They weren't friends, but they shared a bond forged in shared pain and mutual triumph. Lara's business grew, her confidence blossoming as she carved out a space for herself, no longer defined by Mark's lies. Years later, Sarah stood on the balcony of her newly designed home in Lekki, a sleek, eco-friendly masterpiece that reflected her resilience and vision. The Lego skyline sparkled, a reminder of the city's relentless pulse, but Sarah was at peace. The scar of Mark's betrayal remained, but it was a badge of survival, a testament to her strength. Mark had faded into obscurity, his name a footnote in a cautionary tale of hubris and deceit. Whispers of his whereabouts, some said he'd left Nigeria, others that he was scraping by in a low-level job, mattered little to Sarah. He was her past, not her future. Her firm was now a household name, her community center a beacon for women seeking to rebuild. She mentored young architects, sharing her story to inspire, not to dwell. One evening, as she hosted a small gathering on her balcony, Amara raised a glass. "To Sarah," she said, "who turned ashes into art." Sarah smiled, clinking her glass. "To new chapters," she replied, her voice steady, her heart full. The pain had shaped her, but it hadn't broken her. She was no longer the betrayed wife, but a woman who'd risen, her story a powerful reminder. Betrayal might sting, but true strength lies in how you write the unwritten chapters. The end.